Hello everybody, Sassy Sassenach hello and all that. Today we're going to have a look at choosing our colour scheme for Riley Redcrest. This is not always something I do, but it is worth doing. Really, it would have been worth doing before I'd printed out the model. So then I could tell if it was, too detailed or if certain details needed to not be so close together. And I'll go over some of the rules that I use at least when picking colour schemes, mostly cobbled together and stolen off of other people. But I've been painting miniatures for a long time, and the last few years I've tried to actually dig into, what makes certain color schemes work, because sometimes you'll have a color scheme that you really want to do, and then once you're looking at it, it just doesn't work for whatever reason, and we'll go into kind of why that might be. But first, on the screen are the 4 palettes that I had picked for my previous models. So you can see for Leaf the Elf Ranger, their scheme is primarily green with orange and pink, and this sort of reddy pink as their supporting colors, secondary, tertiary, I don't know. I'll tend to add extra colors for details on top of that. Probably shouldn't do that, I don't know if I wanted to be a purist, but I always end up doing it. What you can do is mix them out of the other colors to keep things kind of all on track. So have this yellow be a little bit more on the green side than on the red side, have this skin be a bit more on the pink side. Since we're doing Quinn's rival, Riley, let's have a look at their colour palette. I wanted their primary colour to be red. This actually didn't quite end up happening. They shifted more over to these sort of blues, with the blue steel armour and the dark blue highlights to the armour, or not highlights, dark lights. And then the red is really on the feathers, the pink skin, cloak. On the actual model, the unicorn as well has pinky red horns and a mane. But again, I've added this extra colour of yellow because I wanted there to be a gold trim. So breaking my own rules. Certain things may just look good to you or just maybe more fun to do for you. So you should always do that. People's colour vision is quite unique and there's no accounting for taste. So one thing I'm wondering actually, just before we start doing anything complicated, what if I just invert Quinn's scheme? What do we end up with if we're going for sort of the opposite of Quinn? Well, this seems to be too complicated. Change of plans. Let's use Photopea. Ah, good old fake Photoshop. There we go. Okay, so we end up with something like this. That's the inverse of Riley's scheme. We've got sort of green, teal, cyan, not sure what this is, I'm going to call it a sienna, and a beige. Quite a sort of cool, natural pastel scheme. Possibly not what we're after for Riley, but one of the things you can do is you can use any shade of these colours. So if we wanted, we could have these colours be really dark or more vibrant. These are just kind of the guidelines we're using. So how I got these in the first place, I don't remember what I use, so I'm just going to search, color palette picker. I search color palette, but for some reason it keeps giving me color palettes. I don't know what a color is, but I'm hoping it's the same thing. And then I just look around until I find one that will do it for free. Okay, here we go. This one just seems to generate random ones, which isn't exactly what I want. Is this what I want? We're doing it live. Yeah, I want one where you can kind of visualize like this. Okay. And then we have, nice, analogous. Oh, here we go. Analogous, complementary. You can see. So just to go over the different kind of color schemes you can have. Analogous is it's picking, you've got this color wheel, which represents a wheel with all the colors on it. As we're going into the center, they're getting duller. As we're going out towards the outer edge, they're getting brighter. What they're actually doing in the center here is they're mixing. So I always used to think if you mix all the colors together, you get brown, but actually if you mix them together, you get gray. So in the middle, we have gray. And you can make different tones of grays out of different mixes of colors. And that's actually quite a fun thing to do as well, is once you've got your color palette, create the gray out of your colors. So different types of color palette. Analogous is when they're close together on this wheel. So our primary color here is red, and then we've got on either side of it going into a more magenta, pinky hue, moving into purple and blue as we go around that side, and then orange on the other side, moving into yellow and green as we go around the other side. Here is where it's getting darker or brighter. And importantly, as you're adding white or black to the color, it's getting less vibrant. The hue is fading. So you can see as I move it, it's getting paler and paler and paler, more and more desaturated until it may as well be grey according to this wheel. So going back to red a second and our possible color schemes, we've got analogous. These will, they're all kind of in the same color group. Some people really like analogous schemes. They're quite sort of neat. They look very purposeful and uniform, but you actually still have a load of shades with them despite the limitations, because if you're kind of looking here, we've got bright pink, bright red and orange. And then as we're going to the middle, we've got all these different shades that go all the way to grey. And then we have all these different shades going into black. And then we have all these different shades going into white. So you've still got a ton of colors to play around with. And on top of any colors that we're going to add here, you can also use black, white, or gray as sort of get a better gray as neutral colors. So you basically got 3 extra colors on top of whichever colors you're picking for your scheme, black, white, and gray. And I would also apply that to silver as well. So we can add a sort of silver metal color as well to whatever we're doing, which could be good because probably the exhausts and pipes and stuff on Riley's Dragonmobile are going to be silver. So we don't need to worry too much about those adding extra colors or what to do there. So other types of colors we've got all here. So complementary is when they're on opposite ends of the color wheel. So these are very distinct from each other, as opposed to the analogous, where they're all kind of similar. And this creates a really nice contrast between these two. Red and cyan, yellow and blue, green and pink. I've always been a big fan of orange and blue, quite like green and pink as well, and red and blue, honestly, although I tend to use a darker blue rather than a cyan. So first, let's go to split complementary. So you can see our primary color is now cyan, and then rather than being directly opposite of it, we've got two more colors that are both slightly at an angle from opposite of it, creating this kind of triangular movement across the color wheel. Let's say we want red. That gives us our green, which most people think, well, the opposite color to red is green, which is true in split complementary. So we've got green here, and we've got a nice blue. And red, blue, and green is a really nice classic scheme. And again, you can have all the shades going all the way to grey, all the shades going to dark and light. You've got a lot of colours to pick from with a split complementary scheme. I tend to pick schemes that have multiple colours, more than, two, because otherwise I run out of colours. But there's other way to differentiate the same shades or the same fundamental colours, which we'll have a look at as well. Then we've got double split complementary or complementary, probably complementary, huh? I'm going to forget to say that. That gives us 5 colours. And here we've got that triangle again, but now we've also got these analogous colours as well. So we've got a primary colour, we've got its analogous colours, and we've got its split complementary colours. And that gives us a nice big palette to work with. But if you're not careful, you'll end up with kind of too much colour here. And what we'll go into in a bit, and I'm probably using the wrong word here because colour theory gets a little complicated with having all these different words for things like hue and value and saturation, all kind of seem to be the same thing but are different, is you don't want all of these to be the same value. I don't know, I'm just picking one at random. This. You don't want them to all be at the same point on the wheel. You would want, say, one of them all the way up here. I'm not allowed to do that, but you'd say you want this orange down here. This pink, is made darker. We've still got the bright red, but then these are, this is lighter. This one's more white and all that. So we're starting with the same colors, but they're all at different points on their way towards the middle and around the edge of this wheel. And that will help differentiate them from one another. So looking at some of the other ones, we've got rectangle scheme. So it's basically like we've got two halves of the split complementary scheme, where instead of having a primary color in the middle here, we have two either side and then two either side on the opposite. It's quite nice and can be good for a scheme where you've kind of got two pieces of something. There's two fundamental bits. So I mean, actually it might be appropriate for Riley, considering we have his body and the car. Then we've got tetradic, which is similar, but they're all now opposite from each other. So we don't have to sort of pair them or consider their pairing. They're all as distant from each other as they were at the start. We've basically got two primaries almost, and they're opposites. And triadic, kind of like split complementary, but again, they're all equidistant from each other. So this kind of tool is really useful if you have a primary color that you're thinking of. So if, say, I'm thinking Riley's fiery, so primary color is going to be a sort of reddy orange, then I can go, okay, this is what the triadic scheme looks like. Do I like these colors? This is what the tetradic color looks like. Split complementary, rectangle, double split complementary. If I'm going simple, okay, that's the color I need to oppose it with. This is my primary sort of secondary color. And if I'm going analogous, this is what it would look like. And this is one of the sort of things I'm thinking about actually is, do we go for a fire theme? Now just looking at their own little color theory section and seeing if there's anything useful to steal from this. But to be honest, it seems kind of as vague as me. Like this tetradic schemes are an excellent starting point for creating color palettes. Great, thanks. Yeah, that's the whole point of this website. Fine tune them using color shades, tints, and tones. Okay, so use the color palette generator to make a color palette and then adjust it according to the color palette you want. I'm sorry, HTML color codes. I appreciate you and I'm using it. Paleton's also an okay one. I remember I've used this before. You can kind of go similarly. You get they have a monochrome version. You can get the analogous version. It has these handy little swatches where it shows you little different kind of value shades of them, which can be very useful. I forget what I've used this for, but I've definitely used it before. Oh, nice. And HTML color codes has an image color picker because that's what I was thinking about next. So one of the things you can do is if you've got kind of a theme that you're thinking of, you can just pick the scheme out of an image. So for example, if we're going for fire, maybe something cool like a volcano. And we upload the image and it gives us this very unvolcanic color palette. What about this bright red? I'm just going to shuffle it about until I get something I want. That's a bit better. Let's maybe use this as a starting point. Oh, nice. And I can set the primary colors. Okay. Now we're starting to cook with vinegar, as nobody says. And I've got this screenshot of Riley that I've desaturated so that we can color over them. And we've got our first color palette. But to be honest, I'm going to have a look at some of the color palettes I was planning on, by which I mean scribbling random notes on my phone. Okay, so according to my notes, one of the ones I wanted was green metallic armor, red hair. Green and red with orange highlight. I can sort of get that with the rectangle. It's not really orange, green, or red, though. If I get red, then I end up with yellow and blue. If I want orange, can't have the green. The Tradic's even farther away. Split complementary gets me red and orange, but no green. Struggling for my life here. It's as if it's telling me, do not do this color scheme. But you know what they say, strike and the universe submits. Who says that? Probably no one good. Got a paint in mind is the thing. I've got this sort of like, I think it's Aztec Gold speed paint. And it's like a green gold. I thought might look nice, especially with a kind of red or orange hair. Peloton, will you bend to my will? Okay, so that is sort of the color I'm after. That gives me the red. That could be okay. So that's a tetrad. Oh yeah, so this one actually lets you adjust. Okay, here we go. So just fight it as hard as you can until it gives in. So now we've got a tetrad. It's based on a website tool, so we know it's official. Yeah, sure, something like that. It's just a guideline. I've basically already written some color schemes down I want to try. So now I've got a bit of a guideline of what other colors won't look completely horrendous if I use them in there. So let's name these. Okay, we've got volcano, volcanic, I guess. We'll go with green meth for what it might become. Or maybe like this so that we could get the orange back. I want there to be fluorescent orange flames in this one. Most of the other schemes I've got we can make with this volcanic palette. Before we want to move on to colouring, I'm going to write some basic rules that I have. So one is, you know, that whole sort of colour wheel shenanigans. Yep, that's what that says. And that's primarily about having complementary colours, having colours that go well together. So for most of these schemes, I'm thinking, you know, red and blue or orange and blue and green and red. There we've got green and red and orange and blue, which is nice. I'm picking two of those as kind of like my primary colours. And then everything else is secondary accessory colours. So that's about picking your primary colours, which can either be analogous or contrasting. And two is about tone, so warmth and cool. Warmth and cool is a little bit less technical than the other ones because it's sort of a subjective judgment. Generally speaking, red is warm, blue is cool, and all bets are off for basically everything else. Yellow and orange are also sort of warm colors. A green can be warm or cool. I would say this is sort of a warm green, and this is a cooler green. This purple, I have no idea. I think that's a value judgment. Sort of looks cool to me, but it's very reddy, which is warm. So yeah, who knows? I don't like the warm cool distinction as much as the other stuff because it's so fuzzy, but it is useful. And what you can do some cool stuff later on where you shade from kind of cool to warm. So if you were going to have a gradient going up, you'd have a cooler shade of the colors towards the bottom and a warm shade towards the top. Or you can do it side to side as well. That looks quite nice as well. That's once we've got our colors down, or possibly at the beginning when we do a sort of priming spray. There's a priming technique called zenithal, from the word zenith, which means at the top of. You start with your little miniature here, and the simplest way to do it is you spray paint the miniature black all over, and then this is my great spray paint can. You'd spray paint white from the top or from different angles. So maybe we have a darker grey here. We spray paint that from the side, and as we approach the top, we're getting brighter and brighter if you really wanted to get fancy with it. What you can also do to get fancy with it is not use black and white and use off-color tones of them, so that have those warm, cool tones. So what I'll sometimes do is base coat in a very dark blue, so it's very cold color, and then come in from the top with like a nice warm white. So some white with some bright yellow mixed in, or some bright red mixed in if you wanted, or some orange. And it gives it that nice cool to warm transition. And then if you use translucent layers of paint, like very thin layers of paint when you're painting, they'll pick up some of that tone as well. So you'll have that cool, warm shade for free, basically. I might do that. To be honest, I'm not reliable enough at thinning my paints to have the colors come through a lot of the time. But that's another consideration to make in your color schemes. And three is value, which is an important one, a very important one, actually. And this is the thing I was talking about earlier, where sometimes you make a color scheme that seems like it should work, but it just doesn't. And most of the time, a lot of the time, that'll be down to value. So can we have a look at value of these schemes easy? Let's see. So if we change these to monochrome, or not monochrome, sorry, gray. So you can see here, in color, all of these are very distinct, actually. You can see all four squares very easily. If we go to gray, those top two are the same color. That's because they're very similar values. These bottom two are distinguishable. And this is actually quite a nice way of thinking about how to structure this scheme. What this means is those top two colors should not be close together in the scheme, which is our bright green and bright orange, which is fine because we weren't planning to really have those two close together anyway. To be honest, we're unlikely to use this bright green. We'll use this bright orange and then a sort of paler green. So let's see how that, yeah, see, that'll be fine. So we'll use this kind of color here. That'll be sort of our armor value, and then this is going to be the bright orange, so those will stand out. How smarter artists than me have phrased it is that the value gives you the structure of the image. Like your eyes will differentiate from color, but value is deeper than that. To make up something completely off the top of my head, value is digging into the original older vision, and our modern human color vision isn't as strong in defining how we see things. I made that up, but it sounds right, which basically makes it evolutionary psychology. It's exactly as rigorous as anything any of them have ever said. And then let's look at our volcano scheme. Look at the values there, because the thing is, it's not actually, I think once you get good at it, you can tell just by looking what the values are, but I find it very unintuitive at the moment, but it's very important. So looking at this in grey, not bad actually, although we do see that this colour and this colour, I'm going to mark these out actually. So this is our brightest colour, these two are basically the same, and these are darker. So coming back here, I would never think that this very bright red was similar to this dark desaturated purple. And similar, this looks dull to me, whereas this looks bright. So I wouldn't have guessed these are the same value. To me, these look much more similar values, but you can see side by side, they pop out from each other. These pop out from each other. So it's really worth checking out value. And the way you do that is just by desaturating the image, get rid of it. What I'll sometimes do is I'll take pictures of my paint bottles that I'm using, and then I'll turn that to black and white on my phone so that I can tell what values I'm working with, taking a picture of the miniature afterwards and figuring that out. And all you then do, so let's see if I can do an example. If we have a guy and we've decided, we're doing an analogous scheme, I'm going to do a sort of pinky purple and a red, and I'm going to darken the purple so that it's different from this very bright red. But now that I've done it, it's looking a bit muddy. It doesn't excite me, this scheme. And then you go into, you look at it in grayscale and it's all the exact same color. Your eyes can't tell that there's supposed to be two colors there at all. And that's why you're picking up on that slight muddiness. What you can do then is go, okay, well, I'll just change one of the colors. Or maybe I'll do something that I wouldn't expect. Yeah, I'll be like, well, okay, I'm going to darken the red, even though, that seems like it should make it pop. But actually, there is something about it that pops out a little bit more. And if we go into value, we can now see these are easily distinguishable. The sort of shaded structure of the image is much easier for our eyes to make out. And that transfers even when it's in color. This design now looks nicer, even if you wouldn't necessarily know why. So what I mean is, what you can then do is either darken or lighten the other color. So if we go here and lighten up the purple, it's popping even more. And that's because it's even further away from each other, the values. So what it usually means is, if you've got a muddy area, just make one of the colors darker or lighter. You then need to make sure that it's not, hitting the same value as one of the other adjacent colors. So you might need to make it a lot darker or a lot lighter, but that will almost always make the scheme look much nicer. So yeah, value, very important. Probably the most important thing, to be honest. If you ignore everything else, just take a picture of your Mini with the color turned off and see whether everything stands out. Because this leads us actually nicely into our next point, which isn't really it's a bit different from these points, and it's pretty much just a principle for painting and color schemes, which is that the colors shouldn't touch. So no same color touches itself, something like that. There's got to be a better way of phrasing that. That's itself. You can read that. Everyone can read that. My handwriting's so good. And this goes for value as well. So we basically want to set it up, and this is also why I like schemes that have multiple colors, is you want to set it up so that you're not repeating the same color at any edge. So it's okay for this armor to all look the same, but then if I'm making this green, I don't want there to be another exactly the same green touching it. And value is essentially the same principle. It's just it has to apply also when you're looking at the colors without their hue. I don't know what you call it, but when you're looking at them in black and white, you don't want the same values touching. There's definitely deeper rules than this, but this is what I've got so far. Pick your primary colors, pick some nice contrasting ones. If you want, you can just pick one primary color if you're just going to have black and white or silver as well. I always like to have at least, an additional sort of tertiary color almost, just one small area popped out. There does seem to be a bit of a rule of, if I was, say, having Riley be all green and red, and then I decided I was going to make this eyeball blue, because I thought that pops nicely, I should put some other blue color somewhere on it. It doesn't have to be the same shade of blue. If this is really bright blue, maybe I have a dark blue somewhere. It's kind of like suggesting at this color or hinting at it. I like to think it's sort of like foreshadowing it. So I've basically been talking about color schemes for an hour. So let's actually color scheme something, or color it in, as a human would say. So I'm going to pretend to be more organized than I usually am. But what I'll tend to do is I'll either use something like this, or you can use Photopea as well, actually. Maybe I should use Photopea free. Let's do it. Okay, I've just taken a screenshot and pasted it into Photopea, which is just old school Photoshop, but online. So nobody needs to buy Clip Studio or anything, although I like Clip Studio. You can follow along online for free if you so choose. So it can be difficult to figure out where to start exactly. So where I like to start is, what colors do I know are going to be in here? So I'm going to start with my weird green mess scheme first, because I'm not entirely sure how to apply the volcanic one. Although I think possibly red armor, blue dragon, don't know. And I've been using Clip Studio for so long, I've forgotten all the key commands for Photoshop, but that's fine. And I just make a multiply layer up here, which means any color that I put down is going to be translucent and show the details underneath. Problem is, it is kind of hard to color everything on Riley with this angle. It might have been a better idea what would have been a good idea would be to have done separate neutral pose Riley, separate car, combine them, look at the combined lot. But that's a lot of effort. I'm only going to do that when it turns out this was such a bad idea I can't make it work at all. So I want the armor to be that nice green. I've got a nice metallic color for. I want the flames to be very bright orange because I've got cool fluorescent orange that I think will look cool. Maybe same for the eyes as well. Maybe come in the nose as well. Except I've already realized I messed that up. I did them on the same layer. That will happen a lot. But I don't want to do that because the handiness of this method is I can, once I've got all the layers blocked out in a color, I can then just adjust the color as I like. This layer isn't multiplied, but that's fine. I can do that later. Let's multiply it. There we go. Being able to adjust the colors also means that I don't have to actually like the colors as I'm putting them down. So I think for the dragon's body, I'm actually sort of thinking like a black, but not actually black. So either very, very dark green or very, very dark, this kind of teal. But for now, I'm going to go with what we're given. And using this dark shade of teal it's given me on the palette. Looks kind of nice to my eyes. But like I say, I like blue and orange. It's always been one of my favorites. We know we're going to have grey for the metal. I think it'd be cool if it was a grey with, it was a little bit more on the orange side. So it's sort of been charred. Slightly burnt. Again, the angle is a little tricky. Do that for these axles. Maybe for this part of the lance. The exhaust you can see in the background. I don't know if that was an exhaust, but it's grey now. Into a bit of an issue that online Photoshop disagrees with Clip Studio about what this looks like when it's desaturated. But oh well, seems to have decided the palettes work a little bit differently. But I was just checking the green and the blue are different enough, and they are. We're going to have the dragon. I think it's kind of cute that he's got fan art of the dragon that he's riding on his shield, essentially. What we can do as well is select the colors and then delete them out of these other colors where they're not supposed to be to make that a bit neater. Stick some red in there. I feel like Riley Redcrest should have some red, but you know, that is just their surname. You don't necessarily need to be the same color as your surname. If you're called like John Green, that doesn't mean you have to be green. These are daffodils. They have to be yellow. My hands are tied. But that's okay, because like I was saying about tertiary colors, it helps to kind of reference them before. And now I'm going to put in this yellow on the eyes. Kind of getting away from me, to be honest. Starting to think that this color scheme was a mistake and my whole life might have been a mistake. I'm soldiering on because what else can you do? Thinking maybe like a grey ashen skin. A little teeny hint of orange, again giving it that kind of like burnt warm look. Yeah, that's more or less the skin tone I was thinking. Let's get the metal color back. Let's be lazy and just do the chainmail the same color as the rest of the metal. Although nah, let's not. Be good to have it separate so that I can change its color at some point. Too close to the skin. Give Riley kind of a similar orange eye to the car, just in a lighter shade. Chair is also going to need to have a colour quite obscured from here. Sure, why not? Give it a red colour so it's sort of separating the green and the blue. Now the armour trim as well needs some sort of colour. Well, it doesn't actually necessarily, but it would be good if it did. One thing I am thinking is just making it a very bright steel, neutral steel as well, so that I'm not adding another colour. This is already a bit colourful. It does look better with the trim. Could also do it very dark. That's kind of cool, but it does get a little very dark. Kind of like it though. Trying to think of how this would actually look painted. So I'd have quite a light green gold armor with a dark black silver trim, and then probably a more bluish sort of dark shade wash over the armor to blend them together. And that would give it a bit of sort of hue variation and keep it with this sort of teal theme. I don't know. I think that would look pretty cool. I don't necessarily know. That's kind of the problem. A lot of this stuff you don't know whether it will look good until you paint it or not. But you can at least get an idea. I was like, this is the worst thing ever, to be honest. But I kind of like the black trim green armor. I think we've got him a bit more villainous, which was my problem with him to begin with. Funnily enough, the one thing I really don't like is the red hair, which was the one thing I was sure on. Yeah, the black is definitely cooler than the white. I think maybe the coif being the similar shade to the shield and the dragon looks good as well. But the lance shouldn't be that color in that case. But the lance being like that was always a bodge. Okay, do this differently. Because it's not just the coif, is it? It's also these armbands, which, yeah. It's not bad, actually. I mean, I'm coming around on it. The green and teal does keep them kind of the opposite of Riley's scheme, whereas red focus. The orange is a nice complementary high contrast to the dragon. I do think the problem is orange and green together does make me think of carrot. So he does have a sort of vegetable look to him in my mind, but maybe that's just me. And then we keep I think I'll dull down the red of the seat if I did it this way, and then I would keep the bright red hair. Then we keep the sort of red crest idea. But I'm not mad at it. I'm coming around to it. It might need a revision or two when I'm actually painting it if I did it this way. But I think it would look cool. So let's have a look. If we get rid of this layer and just multiply these onto white instead of onto an image, they should basically have their actual tones. Copy that so I don't have to mess around with the actual colors, and let's desaturate. See what we got. Looks pretty good, to be honest. You can tell like pretty much everything is separating. There is a bit of an issue with the green from the armor and the orange and the light orange from the claws, but otherwise we've done a really nice job of keeping everything, all the values separate. So the scheme will be like visually coherent, which actually, I mean, once you get rid of the thingy, you can kind of see as well. Once you get rid of the image beneath it, I think this is a perfectly cromulent scheme. It's just, you know, how villainous does it look like? Did I really was carrots really what I was thinking of when I was thinking of Riley? Let's mess around with the hues a bit, see if we can accidentally fall into a good scheme. No, not really. Although, it's not too bad. One of the missing colors from the groups, from the models I've done so far is yellow. There's no majorly yellow characters, so that was always a potential. This way I could give them gold armor with dark trim, and I do like the green dragon with the pink flame. I think that looks cool. That is another potential option. Let's keep that just in case. What I might also do before I take a break is just a sort of quick and dirty version of this volcanic scheme. Now that we have all the colors on their own layers, we can just copy all the layers and do what we want with them. So I don't know where that purple is going to go, so what I'm going to do is do like a really dark version of it, and actually like that. I was thinking a sort of black dragon for this one. And so I'm sort of roughly getting to the right place, and then I can just make whatever colors I like out of that. So for this, I'm going for a more grey armor, the slight cool element. Although to be honest, I might go for the yellow, because otherwise I'm going too monochromatic or too desaturated with the black dragon and the silver undercarriage. I am hungry. Chat, again, you got any food? Give me it. I always have this issue that yellow and red schemes look like McDonald's to me, or mustard and ketchup. So we've gone from carrots to mustard and ketchup. What kind of skin tone can we make out of those colors? And what value do we want? Darker skin actually looks pretty sweet with the light armor. Have some of the purplish hue as well. So Riley and the dragon kind of have similar skin tones, or at least base skin colors. Some bright blue because it's in the scheme, and also it's a fire color when things get super hot. I quite like a lot of this as well, to be honest. What I'm wondering is what to do about the armor. I'm not actually sure about the gold armor. Silver armor looks pretty cool. Red armor is cool as well, actually. I'd need to change up some of these colors, but that looks pretty cool. Okay, hang on. I like the silver armor too. I'm going to save that. The only issue with the silver armor is that's what Quinn has, but the rest of the scheme is quite different. And actually, well, it kind of isn't, is it? It is and it isn't. They sort of have very similar schemes but look quite different, which is also kind of a cool way of doing them. But let's go back to that red armor, because I thought that looked cool. But I think if this is pulled off right, this looks like a pretty cool like volcanic scheme on its own. I'd maybe have, you know, the sort of gradient on this trim where it's going from sort of reddy to orangey to more yellowy gold. But there's a couple of things to change if I want the armor to be red. Firstly, change the armor to red. The trim is going to need to be lighter, a brighter orange. Been looking at this too long now, my eyes are unfocusing, but I'm struggling. I'm gonna make it. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. Okay, and then what if we boost this to sort of pink, the flame? Could also have it be the fluorescent orange again, considering the orange on the armor is actually gonna be gold. That wouldn't be such a bad idea. Or a very fluorescent red if the armor is going to be darker. I was also thinking we could get our pink back, but perhaps not. I think, yeah, either the fluorescent red or the fluorescent orange will look pretty cool. I quite like that. What we have ended up with, though, is potentially our issue identified with the values up here, where we have our purple face in the middle of this red armor, although the red is quite a different hue, so let's see how that works. So these are our block colors. Let's desaturate them. Yeah, so we have a lot of colors that are all kind of in the same range. Flame is okay, the trim is okay, and the dragon color is pretty good, but the armor, the face, and the silver, and the secondary armor color are all basically the same value. Oh yeah, I hadn't even noticed the secondary armor color because it's so baked into everything else. So if we bump up the color of the silver, which is fine, we'll make it'll make it pop quite nicely against the dark dragon. I wonder what happens if we bump up the sort of saturation and darkness a little bit on the armor. Not very much. We've fixed the metal, but we've somehow made some of it worse. So let's keep the armor like that because I like it like that. I'm going to make the hair darker. Could make the skin lighter. That'd be an easy way to make it pop. But I quite like the dark skin and the red armor. It looks cool. Maybe if I bump up the saturation, but then Riley becomes very purple. I could always bump it down, but then that makes it go into the coif. How about making the armor a bit lighter? Bump up the saturation a bit, bump up the lightness. Then I would get into the trim. Yeah, here's the problem. It's a bit of a balancing act, but yeah, the easiest thing to do is to make the lighten the value of the skin. Then that's sort of the least changing other things option I have. Okay, yeah, that is a little better. Or I have to bump up the skin, make them quite purple indeed. But I think that's okay. There's nothing in the rulebook that says someone can't be purple. Yeah, not bad. So that's our volcanic scheme. That's our green mess scheme, living up to its name. And that's our ashen volcanic scheme, which also has pretty decent value differentiation. Out of the two, who do I like more? Don't have to decide now. I think potentially this one, actually. I mean, I like the dark skin and the light armor. I always think that's a really cool combo. I'll get some chance to do some cool flame effect on this. I think this is also cool, but the red armor says vampire to me, and Riley is not a vampire, as far as we know. There's nothing in the rulebook that says Riley's not a vampire. I do also sort of, hear me out. It's a green mess, but there's a sort of, like reptile dinosaur style thing to it, which I do like. And it would be quite different from the other schemes. I think the black trim is probably a bad idea in terms of actually having to paint it. That seems like it would be awful, but maybe not actually. I suppose not. I just need to do the trim first and then paint over it. And it has a sort of like dinosaur toy look, like you get, and by you I mean me. Like I'm always getting people cars that are also dinosaurs for their kids, and I have no sign that they like them, but I like them. And I might try and do both, see which ones I like best. I'll ask my friends which ones they like best, and they'll all pick the edgelord cohesive schemes, and then I'm going to make him the horrible green one, aren't I? We'll see. I'm going to take a break. But that may be it with the colour scheme videos, unless I think of any other one. I'm kind of hyped to just start painting and see what happens. Because you never know until the paint hits the brush. It's one thing to do all this with, where I can just eyedropper all the colours in, but it's a different thing if I'm talking about, the green on here is going to be this sort of metallic-y green gold, so it'll look quite different from that. And there'll be also sort of gradients of shading that aren't here, where there's just sort of the flat colours over the model. So we'll see. I'll have to figure out how to film and paint at the same time, so that's going to be fun. But we'll see you then. Thanks, everyone.
Hello everybody. Hello Britain. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and click your mouse upon the bell button. Some of you may be wondering why I am appearing on such a famously apolitical YouTube channel. I have been advised to pledge my support for aiding children in wheelchairs. My father was a tool maker, so I know the hard graft that goes into a job like this. And growing up in a working class background, I too was a child who made use of chairs, if not the chairs of the wheeled variety. Nevertheless, it is with great sorrow and a heavy heart that I am making the tough decision to outlaw wheelchairs and charity until I am in possession of all the facts on the matter. Some of you may protest my decision. You are well within your right to do so. But before you do, consider this. You will be arrested. Protest is now, in fact, illegal. However, I recognise that it may be of some benefit to the economy if some children are supported. Charity may now be illegal, but lobbying is a noble pursuit, just like giving to charity. So I implore you to lobby these children, perhaps with expensive glasses, or concert tickets, or failing that, purchase a model from the shop linked in the description or in the bio, and slip me a few Coldplay tickets, and I'll look the other way. That is the responsibility this moment demands, and I am the one to deliver it.